Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Right People, Right Places podcast. I'm your host, Raul Mendoza, and I'm so excited to get into this episode here. I have the privilege of having Nick Morris on. And just to give an introduction, we're going to be talking about breaking barriers and reaching new altitudes today and leading with intention. And this is someone that we have on right now. Nick is somebody that embodies this message through her experience in executive spaces, working as a CEO herself and coaching now CEOs in Vistage, which we're both Vistage members. She's a Vistage chair. I'm a Vistage member here with the CEO group here in Milwaukee. Love the network, love what folks are doing in this space, the opportunity to rub shoulders with other leaders doing big things for themselves and for their businesses. And this is what Nick does now on a day in, day out basis. But just to give a little more of an introduction, we're thrilled to have Nicole Morris on. She goes by Nick. She is the CEO Whisperer, executive coach, growth strategist, and as I mentioned already, Vistage chair, working with leaders all across the board. She's also the founder of ND Morris and Associates, where she helps business owners break through barriers, think bigger, move faster, and lead with intention. There we go again, leading with intention. Because as she says, extraordinary leadership should be the norm, not the exception. So it is an absolute pleasure to have you on, Nick. I'm so excited to get into this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Let's jump
Well,
in.
yes, let's do it. So much to talk about here with this topic. So many different directions to go. But I think before we jump into the meat here, I'd like for our audience just to get to know you, Nick. And you've been called the CEO Whisperer. What inspired your mission to help business owners and break barriers with leading with intention? Just if you could talk about that and just kind of share your story in that way.
I guess the name came from the fact that I don't talk to CEOs. I don't talk at them. I talk with them. So
Mm,
that whispering piece of it, I'm not demanding. And so there's this analogy that, consulting and coaches. I remember my coach yelling at me. I remember when I didn't hit the line right or I didn't dive correctly when I was on the swim team, and my coach gave me the business. As a consultant, I want to talk with you because I've walked the walk and I
mm,
understand where you've been at. And so it's really hard to hear someone yelling at you, but it is
right.
easier to hear someone who is speaking softly, understands what you're going through, know that they have sat in the same chair and they've carried the same weight. After, years at a Fortune 100 company and building my own company, I just realized that brilliant leaders were hitting ceilings, not because they weren't smart, but because no one dared them to tell them the truth. No one dared them to soar to the next altitude. Um, and no one talked with them. They all
Mm.
talked at them. They were either trying to sell them something or tell them what to do and just not talk to them. So I just talk to them. So I'm the
I
whisperer.
I love that. I love the concept of that, even just the visual of whispering versus, um, shouting or, being stern in those ways. And obviously all those types of communication have their place, but I think
Yeah.
one thing that I have, my wife tells me, she's always telling me to work on my tone. Just tonality is everything.
Yeah.
And it's at the end of the day, it's about how that message lands. And I think you're so right. Even in what you just shared about being a consultant, you know, I actually did a word origin search at one point. I was just curious. I'm always curious about the origin of words. And actually, the word consultant comes from the Latin word consultere, which means to start a discussion, and you're so right in what you're saying. I think so often consultants or even coaches or even CEOs, they're in a place of authority and they want to be told what to do because they're telling people what to do. But that's not the point. You know what I mean? It's this idea of starting a discussion. The goal is to have people come to a conclusion by themselves, and that's what a good consultant does. You know, a good coach does. It's not about us giving the answer. It's about them helping CEOs arrive at that answer, helping people. You know, and so I love what you said there. I think it's beautiful, this idea of whispering, and especially in a time where there's so much noise, you know,
Yes.
and you know, for you to be able to be this, you know, how do you cut through the noise? Well, I think it actually is having that discussion, whispering versus shouting, because there's so many things shouting at us anyway, you know. So I love that, love that. So you mentioned it already. You've led Fortune 100, built multi-million dollar ventures, and you know, in recent months have in an incredible fashion built a CEO board here for Vistage
Yes.
that you're leading now, in record time, I know. And w- w- you know, what's a key moment or lesson that shaped your belief that, you know, again, you mentioned this in your profile and even in discussions we had post this podcast recording, you know, that belief that extraordinary leadership should be the norm, not the exception. If you could speak to that story and experience you had that kind of, you know, kind of was the game changer for you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. I wanna say the I know exactly what day that was that happened. Um, it was an epiphany. It was a Monday evening. We were living in California, and I was still working on the railroad. It was March the 7th, 2016, and I was actually off that day and got a call from my boss, and, he says, "Ace 10 has derailed." Ace 10 was a commuter rail that had, um, over 200 people on board, and it had derailed, and I had never worked
Mm,
a human derailment. I had always worked freight. And so as I'm driving, and it's about an hour and a half drive from where I live to this derailment, I'm going through my brain all of the resources that I'll need to be successful at re-rolling. Now, mind you, I operated in the sphere of or made these decisions in my brain as I'm driving based on freight, not based on humans.
mm,
So when I get out there, I hear the dogs barking. I'm going, why are the dogs barking? And it dawned on me, there's people, there's humans in the water. I can't do what I thought I wanted to do for an hour and a half driving out here until we get the humans out of the water.
right.
And I remember standing in front of the rescue folks and people that were willing to jump in and help pull people out of the water because it had derailed into the water. It was about 30, 40 people, and everyone was waiting for me to have the answer, and I didn't.
Wow.
And that's when it hit me. Leadership is absolutely not about knowing everything. It is about creating the clarity so that people can move together and
Mm,
being able to have the synergy with those people um, to overcome the derailment and get through the issues of the derailment of of that situation.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We didn't lose anybody. All 200 and I want to say 206 souls were saved, and that made me believe that extraordinary leadership isn't optional. It's learnable, and it should be the standard, and people should look for it all the time. And so that's my story, and that's what
Wow.
made me really change how I led teams, that I didn't have to show up and have all the answers. And we as CEOs, we sit at the table, or the head of the table of our own businesses, and we have the weight of the expectation that everyone expects us to have the answer, and it's okay if you don't. The the catalyst is knowing where to go to help you find the answer and having the clarity to find the answer.
Totally.
That's it.
That's amazing. That's an incredible story. I mean, it's so, you know, it's a real life story, something that happened to you, and
Mhm.
it has so many lessons within it. I mean, even just hearing what you're saying, even just the issue of derailment. I mean, eh, the fact that you were dealing with in a situation where a train had actually derailed, and there's people involved, there's, all sorts of challenges and dynamics um, that you need to consider. And, so often as leaders of companies, of teams, we're looking at the problem and we're trying to execute a solution. We're trying to develop a solution. And, you know, I love what you said there about just that moment of realizing actually, I don't know what to
I
do.
don't know what to
But
do. Yeah, I don't know what
yeah.
to do, and just the fact that I pulled up and there's dogs barking, and again, I've worked hundreds and hundreds of derailments, Mississippi West,
Hmm.
um, but I had never worked, a passenger train. 214 people on the train with the staff, and they're in the water. We have to pull them out of before I can even move the equipment, I've gotta get the people out
Wow.
first.
Wow.
Um And I didn't and it did not and I knew that ACE was a commuter, rail on the Altamont corridor. I knew that, but my brain didn't connect the 2, that humans were involved. It was rush hour. It just did not click until I got
Oh
there, and
my
then it was
gosh.
like, I don't know what to do.
Right. So
Um
let so even from that point, just to ask, you came to that realization, which is wonderful. And I think there's something to say there. I want to kind of dig into this story a little bit, and I think it's going to segue nicely into the rest of what we're going to talk about. But you got there, and I think so often as leaders we can be in denial that we're in this place of denial where we've realized we don't know everything, but we're not willing to admit it until that critical moment. And here you are as a leader in a critical moment, and it's like the only way you're going to arrive at a solution is if you come to terms with this, and then figure out what to do. So you came
Mhm.
to this conclusion. You knew, okay, I don't know what to do. So from that point on, what changed? And how did you know what to do in that moment? And how did you go about, obviously the first, I think for us, we want to be big picture, right, as leaders, and figure out the big problem. But we realize that, the thing that can wake us up sometimes is the reality of people, and that actually people are the most important thing. And they're the ones that are running our organizations. And in the same way in the story, people and the saving of lives is actually the most critical thing. So how did you go about mobilizing that mission, and then ultimately getting this train underrailed, if that's a word?
Yeah. Yeah. We had to get it out of we had to what we the railroad terminal, we had to get it out of the drink. So the
Yeah.
caboose or the leading, locomotive had gone into or leading, car had gone into the water. So,
Hmm.
the first thing is you acknowledge what you don't know, and you start asking questions to build your knowledge base, and so it's at that point, it's rapid. What do we need to do? Who's been saved? Who's in there? You know, do we know if anybody's trapped? So then you start kinda going down underneath the iceberg in a sense pretty quick because you
Yeah.
gotta make some assessments. And part of the job of being a leader is not only making the assessments, but then being able to take the assessments and line it up with resources.
Yes.
Um, and then being able to call and get the resources. And part of that also is having relationships. It's
Hmm.
hard to call someone who does not know you and give them a sense of urgency. They
Yep.
don't trust you, they don't know you. So you have to have those relationships built before you need them.
Hmm.
And I had those relationships built. So I could call the manager of track maintenance. I could call someone at the locomotive facility because I had built those relationships. And so you say, okay, here's the resources I think I need. Can you help me? Um, and so they are now part of that pull and they're part of that vision of what you're working on. Um, And then it becomes intentional, and then you just start talking through, "Okay, I've got this," and you go back and you double check with the person
Hmm.
who has a little bit more knowledge than you because, again, you don't have all the answers, and it's a collective. It's a community and it's a
Yes.
collective, and we just started talking. to the point where I called the regional vice president and says, "I'm gonna need help. You. I mean, not the resources. Neil, I'm gonna need you." And so Neil, 3 rungs up, was out there, and I remember as things kinda calmed down and we got the people out of the water, Neil was with me digging up gravel and digging up,
Huh,
ballast.
huh.
Um, it was amazing that the collective
Yes.
pulled together under the leadership that I did not realize I had. And the
Mm.
leadership wasn't about me showing up and having the answers. It was the ability to listen, to ask the questions, to not think that I was smarter or better than anyone, not do it my way or the highway attitude. It was collectively, awfully, how do we get this done?
So
And
good.
and it was amazing that 24 hours in 24 hours, we got the people saved, we got the train off the rail, and we had the track back online. 24 hours. They were running commuter train 24 hours later. It was phenomenal. And like I said, I was good. I was good at cleaning up real,
Y yeah.
derailments, freight, uh, stuff we've spilled on the ground and freight. I was good at freight, but the human deal was like, "Holy cow." Yeah. And you're
Right.
just thankful. But yeah, it was
Amazing.
it was amazing. It was amazing. And it pulled together because of the intention of not knowing it all.
Mhm. So good. So good. So much within that. I mean, wow. I think there's you kind of overcome that moment of denial, right? That leaders face. You begin to ask questions, you assess the situation, and you begin to take action. And you don't do that in isolation, you do that with other people. This
Correct.
is where it's not about pulling rank, it's not about egos. It's, hey, we need all hands on deck, so it doesn't matter if you're three notches above me. Neil, I need you out here, and that's the test of true leadership. At the end of the day, it's like you go through these internal things that are happening, but at the end of the day, it's about showing up, and I think that's
Correct.
where, it's uh, the, good things happen when leaders show up.
Yeah,
You
I
know
always say I invite CEOs to the table and humans show up because vulnerability is there. I was
Hmm.
vulnerable. I showed up. God, it's just you can really just unpack this. Male
Yeah,
dominated
seriously.
field,
Yes.
not knowing what to do. My boss having enough trust that I was going to go out there and at least make heads or tail of it first time. So Jim trusted me. Neil trusted me to go out there, to get out there, give the assessment, say what I need to be vulnerable and not be so bullheaded that says, well, I know everything and I'm going to prove who I am.
Yep.
Hey, I need some help. This is, this is a lot.
Yeah.
And I want to do good, not only for me, not for the organization that I work with, but for the people who I'm working with that are standing here that are they've got mud in their hair and they've gone into the water,
Yeah.
they're wet. Um, we all want to do good. And the
Totally.
success of not losing people. So yeah, sitting at the table as a
Hmm.
as a Vistage chair consultant now, bringing the CEOs to the table and the CEOs having the ability to say, I'm vulnerable.
Mm.
I don't know it all. I can't figure it out. I need some help. Here's my strength, but I need some help. And can you help me?
Mhm. So good.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge.
Seriously.
And
Seriously.
that's the leading from above. Um and being intentional. Because showing
Mhm.
up is more than just being a seat in the chair. It's showing up, playing full out, being vulnerable, asking the questions, um, and really building your tool chest of leadership.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Absolute so good. So good. I think even just to kind of continue down that vein, I think as leaders, we have to, we always have this uh, juxtaposition of just, um, we have to be able to move fast, but at the same time, we we don't want to miss the key pieces and hitting those
Mhm,
key milestones. And whatever we're trying to build, and whatever success we're trying to aim for. And how do you help leaders balance speed and strategy, even in this example that you brought up of this derailment, which was kind of the critical moment here for you as a leader, that where you realized, so many different things. It was, but I think there was something of speed that this thing needed to be turned around. You mentioned 24 hours, which is an
mhm.
incredible achievement to be able to do that and have it back on track, literally, uh, pun intended there. But how do you balance speed and strategy? How do you know, as a leader, how do you do that well when you're considering all the factors? And what's guidance that you provide to leaders you coach and CEOs?
The first thing is, I always say check your filters.
Mm-hmm.
Because moving faster does not mean moving or running harder.
Right.
It's cutting through the noise. And so you
Yeah.
have to have some kind of mechanism, whether it's you, whether it's systems to cut through the noise. Um, and you want to be able to cut through the noise without having to second guess. Because when you have to second guess, now you start questioning. And then
Mm-hmm.
where does the questioning stop? So you have
Mm-hmm.
to build things you have to put things in place. That speed now will translate into clarity, which
Mm-hmm.
will translate into acceleration.
Oh, good.
Speed without any clarity is chaos. It's
Yes.
like running into a burning building without an oxygen mask. It's like or a water hose. You wouldn't expect a firefighter to
Huh.
run into a burning building without being geared up and having some type of mechanism, or filters to protect himself or herself.
Yeah.
They're gonna have
Yeah.
the oxygen mask on, they're gonna have an extra canister on, they're gonna have fire protection on, they're gonna have a water hose to help fight the fire. Um, CEOs have to operate the same way. You still have to put those filters in. You have to put those barricades in so that you can move faster. It's not about running harder.
So good. It reminds me of the the old Navy SEAL adage, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It's not
Yes.
it's not about necessarily having muscle speed. It's about having the right. Yeah, I love how you said it there, filters, so
Mhm.
that you can move fast. But it's all about moving right and moving with intentionality. That's actually fast. The thing with the Navy SEAL, when they're disarming and rearming their weapon,
Mhm.
it's not about rushing through that process. It's about mastery, and
Yeah.
mastery takes time. But once you master it, that's where you gain speed, right? That's where you're able to accelerate, because you've learned and mastered certain elements. You've gotten these filters in place to know what to focus on at just the right time, like you're mentioning it. I think that's a great way of saying it, filters. I've never thought of it that way, in terms of thinking of speed in terms of filtering. I think that's a really neat picture to think about. And you know so much of what you've shared already, also kind of points at the theme of turning chaos and into clarity. And that's what leaders are doing all the time. or
Mhm.
crisis we're dealing with crises all the time.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I think what I wanted to, you talked about filters. We're talking about chaos here a little bit. How do I think part of those filters are creating alignment. How do intentional leaders create alignment between vision, culture, and execution? You know, how do you do that? How do you bring those elements together, those filters together in such a way that it creates momentum and speed instead of like obstacles and frustration?
Well, at first it starts with, having the intention,
Yep.
building on purpose instead of reacting. R-
Mm-hmm.
Reactionary um, will cost you. It's going to cost you
Mm-hmm.
time. It's going to cost you money. Every word, every hire, every meeting ties back to a vision or a value.
Mm-hmm.
Intentional leaders don't just show up and kiss the babies and sing the mantra of the vision. They live it Monday morning, when the weekend didn't go so well, when, the night shift didn't get everything
Mm-hmm.
done, when the delivery didn't make it on time for that morning. So it starts with the
Mm-hmm.
purpose,
Mm-hmm.
um, and realizing that it's kind of a prong of there's vision, there's culture, and there's execution. Vision is where you're going. This is
Mm-hmm.
where it's Moses. We're going to the promised land.
Yeah.
I've been given the commandment and we're going to the promised land. The culture is how the people behave on the journey. You could be
Yeah.
lost for 40 days or you can get on where you got to go
Yeah.
based on your attitude, based on the culture. Think about what's going on in your organization that's prohibiting you um, or slowing you down to get to your
Mm.
destination. And sometimes it's the CEO, it's the president,
Yeah.
it's not the people. And then the execution is the vehicle, the processes. What are you doing on a daily basis? How are you executing um, your processes? And when all three of those, the vision, the culture, the execution all line up, then the company just flies. You can look at Apple. Apple struggled in the early days with the computers, but when they figured out the iPhone and that
Mm-hmm.
they had a vision that they wanted every human to have an iPhone and talk with their fingers. I remember watching um, Jobs talk about people talking. He had a dream that people would be talking with their fingers. Um,
Interesting.
and then he built that culture of everybody can play. My way is not the right way. I don't know how we're gonna get there, but I want everyone to play full out. Bring me every idea. No idea is a bad idea. And then the execution of we're gonna try it. We're gonna do some things that are standard, but there's some things that we're gonna really just live outside of the box and figure this out. And he got all three to line up, and that's
So
why
good.
they have the best product out there. I mean,
It's
hands
amazing.
down. Yeah. So we've seen it happen. We've watched it. Look at Apple, look at oh gosh, what's another one? Look at Microsoft. Look at
Yeah.
uh
Yeah.
you look at how they tuned in where they wanted to be, what they wanted to provide to their clients, their services, the culture that they built, and then how they executed. They were relentless in execution.
So good. I so good. It goes back to even your story of that derailment, like, getting on the scene and assessing the situation. Like,
Yeah,
leaders assessing the situation, understanding what, one of the things that I think about with Steve Jobs is he didn't, it wasn't about trying to find out from the customer what they wanted. It was, it was about producing a product that delighted the customer, that they
correct.
wanted, that would evoke a desire, a response, and that required something more than just meeting a need. It required doing something unique and different, thinking outside of the box.
Right. And then, and we get so task focused. And
Mhm.
so I'm gonna bring in AI because everyone that's the buzz. Oh my gosh, AI is we're gonna lose jobs and it's
Mhm.
gonna
Mhm.
streamline and people are gonna go away. It does to a certain extent.
Mhm.
It focuses on the task, but it does not focus on the people.
That's right.
And management can ask. Management. There's a difference. Management and leadership. Management can ask, did we get it done? What was the process? Did we streamline it? But Leadership is gonna ask, do they believe in why we're doing it and what we're doing?
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
use this analogy with my CEOs at the table. I give them the 3 guys who are laying brick. You walk up to
Yeah.
the first guy and he says, you ask them, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm laying brick." "Okay, you're laying brick." I walk to the second guy and goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm building a wall." You walk up to the third guy and you go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "We're building a cathedral." Which one do you think has the vision?
Number 3 for sure.
Number 3. And so if you get everybody in your business, in
Love
your
it.
organization as a leader to build the cathedral, the laying brick part's gonna be easy, which is the AI.
That's really good. Yeah, it's one of these things that's so easily dismissed, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
vision. People wanna be inspired. People wanna
Mhm.
understand, they wanna see something bigger and wanna be a part of something bigger and wanna be
Yeah.
they wanna know, they wanna be able to contextualize, "Okay, how is my contribution going to support this big audacious goal?" And
Yeah.
that is the job of the leader. You're absolutely right. Like they set the tone, they set the vision. It's not just management, and so often leaders can fall into management mindsets, which that's part of
Mhm.
being a good leader. But without, if you quickly go to the execution without understanding the vision, then what are we building? Is it a
Right.
wall? Is it brick, or is it a cathedral? I think that's a great illustration of how we can get lost in the minutia sometimes without vision.
Right. Right. And so a lot of the CEOs, especially small business, they're in the weeds. So they never
Hmm.
get to convey the cathedral.
Hmm.
They're so caught up on just get the brick laid, get the brick laid.
Hmm.
Sometimes they'll cross over and they'll say, "We're building the wall." But very rarely do those in their organization understand that they're building a cathedral and what their impact is on building that cathedral. And that's where the intention, bringing in the vision, bringing in the execution piece, building up the culture, all of that is the leadership piece of it.
So
Yeah.
good. Yeah, again, intention, it's such, we can even gloss over the importance of that word. Like intention doesn't mean that you have, going back to your earlier point, it doesn't mean that we've figured it all out. It's just showing up, and we
Mhm.
show up. We bring what we have and things begin to happen. That's just the magic of leadership. I think it starts with
Yeah.
intentionality. It starts with putting in the work as well, but sometimes you don't have it all figured out and you bring what you have and you go with what you have, and that's where the magic begins to happen. And you're talking about this dynamic of people, and even as we kind of wrap up our episode here and provide some reflections and takeaways from the group, I want to hone in on that piece, you know um the right people, and surrounding yourself with the right people. In that analogy you brought up this idea of, you know, the 3 people there, and the last person had the vision for what to build, cathedral, and but,
Mhm.
that person still needs the bricklayer and the person that's working on the wall, and these people are essential. So you mentioned, you've built peer groups where pressure becomes power. What do you see happens when CEOs surround themselves with the right people? And I guess I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
They stopped playing defense and started playing
Yeah.
offense. It's football season, so I have 5 sons, so everything's always a sports metaphor in my house.
It's good.
But they get the mirrors. So people who reflect the truth and the windows, people who open doors, they move forward. That's where transformation lives.
Yes.
That's where, I coined the phrase of, uh, the next altitude.
Hmm.
At 10,000 feet, you see it different than when on the ground. At 40,000 feet, you see even more of the lane. You can see where the fires are popping up. You can see the embers.
Yeah.
leaders can't stay at ground level and expect breakthrough.
Mhm.
Um, the next altitude means you rise high enough to see what's possible, the
Yes.
vision, the promised land. You got to get above the chaos.
Yes.
Going back to how we open this, why am I the whisperer? Because if I'm constantly living in chaos, you're yelling at me, you're preaching at me, and you're not listening to me, and you're not conversing with me and seeing where I am. And if I'm actually the bricklayer, or if I actually see the cathedral, then how are you helping me?
Right.
And so tying it all in, when they come sit at the table, we offer the clarity. We offer a space where the chaos goes away, and you can think, and you can take a deep breath, and you can go, okay, I think I figured it out. Or at least I want to try it to go this way. And you do it, and it's calm. It's not a battleground. And that's where the breakthrough happens. That's where the humans show up. And that's where the fun really begins, because now all bets are off, because once you tap into that, then you're just going higher and higher, and you're soaring, and your business is growing, your people are growing, you're developing, your people are developing, your customers are happy. It's it's awesome. It is an awesome place to be, and it's an awesome, awesome place to watch and see transform.
I love it. I love even seeing you light up as you shared that. It tells me a lot about how much you really enjoy this work. I just think the work of chairs for Vistage is such wonderful work. It's so fulfilling, and I could tell you've got that that spark of passion and excitement, seeing kind of those light bulbs go off. Even as you're
Mhm.
sharing with me, I feel like certain things are just clicking in my head. I'm just like, oh man, I'm taking this on as if it's for me as well. So I appreciate what you're sharing. As we, it's so good. It's just so good there. Especially with what we're talking about of, elevating, and really soaring to new heights. I mean, this is it, it starts with setting the vision and going for it, and so you've already alluded to this, you've already shared on some of this, but if you could give one piece of advice to CEOs who are ready to break barriers, I guess that's a key word, ready, because sometimes they're not ready, and rise to
Mhm.
new altitudes, what would it be? What would be that one thing? You might have already mentioned it, but I think there's nothing wrong with repetition here. I think when it comes to these ideas.
Yeah. Just realize that the average leadership is expensive. It costs and turnovers, the missed opportunities, uh, and the burnout. You know,
Mm,
we get a lot of bombardment of information that are not addressing the there, it's not addressing the disease or the issue, it's addressing the symptoms. We've
mhm.
we've gone through, and I'm gonna kind of take you a long ways. We've gone
Yeah,
through the self-love, me time, but it's burnout. It's
yeah.
because we're living average lives. We're not stepping into extraordinary. You step into extraordinary, and and you will have the ability to self-care.
Mhm.
Um, those things that they coined
Mm,
terms and movements are addressing symptoms. They're never addressing what's really going on. And that is, there's no focus and there's no clarity. Get the focus, get the clarity, know where you're going, know what culture you're trying to build, um, and know what your vehicles are to get there. Um, Resilience comes from rhythm. It comes from the focus of clarity. It comes from the emotional intelligence from humanity,
mm,
of being humble. None of those show up by accident. It's all daily practice. You can't just
mhm.
wake up on Monday and go, "Okay, I'm gonna conquer the world." You've gotta build the memory, the muscle memory. You gotta build that part of it every day. Um,
Mhm.
and walk it every day. Does that make sense? I know, because sometimes
Yes.
I ramble, so,
No, no, no,
um
I think you touched on something huge there. I mean, You keep dropping these bombs of insight. I think we're gonna have to do another episode at some point, but because it's so good. I think even just this issue of self-care, that's such a prevalent, people, it's like they get burnt out and all of a sudden you start to hear thought leadership around self-care and taking care of yourself and prioritizing yourself. And it's like, to your point, you're addressing the symptom. You're not actually addressing the real issue, which is clarity. It's like, what are you
Right.
doing?
What are
What
you
are you
doing?
doing? And if you knew what you were doing, you wouldn't be burnt out and you wouldn't be talking about self-care. And really that self-care is misplaced
Yeah,
self-care because you're not really addressing the wound or the situation or the
correct.
problem. You're actually just coddling it.
Correct. You're
Uh,
actually making it worse.
yeah, like, so it's like I think there's something there. I mean, even that statement, I think that could this could rub some people the wrong way, but I think it's so true. I think it's such a wonderful thing that you said, because when you have clarity, yeah, things are hard, and yeah, there's still all kinds of problems, but you bounce back differently when you see the bigger picture and you see the context
Correct.
of the
And you know where
problems.
you're going.
Yes, it's
Where are
so
you
good.
going? What's the vision?
Yep.
And if you don't have a clear defined vision, or if you've not effectively communicated the vision, sitting at the table is going to be hard because you don't have clarity.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that I do for the CEOs who sit at my table is like, where are you going? What's the reason why you're
Mhm.
in business? What's
Yeah.
are you building it to sell it? Are you building it to give to the kids? Are you
Yep.
building it for someone? What's the vision?
Hmm.
What paint your cathedral for us so we understand what
Yeah.
we're doing. And today you're a bricklayer, but by the end of the week you'll be building walls. Because you've put something into it every single day. And then you'll start to get that mirror from the table on the reflection of truth. And you'll have
Yes.
windows where you can glimpse in and see yourself, and things will just start to open up. Sitting at the table, having conversation, helping others develop their bricklaying skills while you're building your bricklaying skills. And before you know it, you both have, or everyone at the table has got cathedrals, and you can see their cathedrals and you can
Yes.
feel um, where they are and have that sense of, again, I'm going to keep going back to clarity. And we use
Yeah.
that word a lot, but have the true clarity, because that clarity will define your intentions. It will
Hmm.
it will define how you show up. It will define how you um, foster and feed people around you, how you foster and feed yourself based on your vision.
Hmm.
It's really that simple. And you don't have to climb it
Beautiful.
alone. So CEO is lonely. Being a CEO, the barrier, it's lonely. And altitude without community is lonely and dangerous. Was sitting
Yeah.
on my back patio and I saw the geese. I guess they're geese. They were high enough up, but they fly in the V. They're flying
Yep.
south.
Yep.
And I actually got a chance to watch how they were changing who was on point and then letting the ones who had been on point fall back. And it
Mm.
showed that they were not alone. They
Hmm.
were not lonely. They understood the value of many.
Hmm.
Um, and so in the analogy of how I grew up, it's iron sharpening iron at the
Yeah.
table. It's knowing that
Totally.
I'm weak and you're strong. Help me out. I want to soar with you and we're going to go to the next level. Our altitude's going to increase. And so I got a chance to watch that and I was like, my CEOs are doing that right now. We're flying south for the winter and they're changing up because I've got one CEO who's struggling, but the other ones have undergirded him and lifted
Yeah.
him up and he's still going higher.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
good. I love it. I love it. So, just an last question I have for you, and then, I'd like for you to drop, where people can find you and all this kind of stuff, and we'll kind of wrap up the episode. This has been so good, and I appreciate I mean, I'm gaining so much from this, and I know that our audience, who are CEOs and executive leaders and business owners, are going to gain so much from what you've shared today. But you're a Vista's chair. So, what's next for you in your mission to redefine leadership and help others soar higher? I know that you've just uh, collected this group of incredible leaders and others that you're doing. What's next for you?
Still building the table, still
Yeah.
building the cathedral,
Yeah.
looking for CEOs in the Houston market who are ready to soar higher together. This is not a lonesome mission.
Yep.
My next mission is just scaling that, more groups, bringing more leaders to the table, and building a movement where extraordinary leadership is no longer rare, but it's expected. It's the norm.
Yes.
And it's just, starting with one leadership person or one leader at one leadership table at a time. And Houston is a growing market for small businesses. So, getting our arms around the small businesses here in Houston so they can really be successful.
Fantastic. That's so good. And I'm so glad that you're on this episode. And, just to kind of plug Nick here, she is a fantastic coach. Obviously, if you've listened this far into the episode, you will have learned a lot of valuable takeaways here to help you elevate your business with intention. So, this has been such a great conversation, Nick. I think, like I said, we're going to have to do a part two. Um, Excited for you and what you're building. To me, it doesn't sound like just something that you're trying to do to help a few people. You're trying to spark a movement. And I'm excited to have you on this episode to be able to get you the visibility, and so that people can find you, and if there's CEOs and leaders that are looking for this kind of support, this kind of coaching, but also this kind of context to grow themselves and their business, look no further than Nick Morris. So where can people find you, Nick, for all things Vistage, all things coaching, and helping me elevate to the next level?
Well, my website is ndmorris.com. You can always reach out to me at nmorris@ndmorris.com, or you can find me on the Vistage website. You can look me up as Nicole Morris on the Vistage website. Sometimes Nick will work, sometimes Nicole works. So Nicole is my mother gave me that name, but my friends who know me and love me started calling me Nick. So uh, both will work. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Nick Morris. And of course, I'm sure you'll add a link when you publish
Yes.
this on LinkedIn. You can always find me, or just call Vicious and say I'm calling to talk to Nick. They'll find me. I'm pretty well known in the community now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I talk to Mr. Chairs often, and I've brought up your name a couple times. Oh yeah, Nick, he's doing
Yeah.
big things in Houston. So again, Nick, thank you so much. Yes, we will provide all the links to finding Nick online, in the comments section of this podcast post, wherever this podcast can be listened to, wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and all the rest. YouTube, we also will have this on YouTube. So feel free to click the subscribe button if you'd like to hear from incredible leaders and coaches like Nick, who are doing big things for themselves, their people, and their businesses. Yeah, so this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you again, Nick. And to our audience, thank you for listening in. And we'll catch you next time with another episode of The Right People and Right Places. We're out.
All right. Thanks, Raul. Glad to be here.